Thanks for listening to the Swearing In Podcast, where you'll hear the origin stories of those who chose to serve. So ground your gear, take a seat, and listen up. The Swearing In Podcast starts right now.
Hello and welcome to the Swearing In Podcast. I'm your host, Marty Smith. My guest today is former Canadian Army Lieutenant, host of the Hard2Kill Podcast, and host of the Dave Morrow PT channel on YouTube, Dave Morrow. Dave was born and raised in Montreal, Canada. He graduated high school in 1999. Shortly after that, he joined the Canadian Army. He completed recruit training in 2001 and was assigned to the Canadian Grenadier Guards, a reserve infantry unit in Montreal. He deployed in 2010 to Kandahar, Afghanistan with the Royal 22nd Regiment, also known as the Van Doos. He deployed as part of an Influence Activities, or IA unit, working in the Civilian Military Cooperation, or CIMIC section. Dave later received a commission and became an officer. He left the military as a lieutenant in 2016. Now this concludes your pre-brief, so let's get on with the interview. My guest today is former Canadian Lieutenant, host of the Hard2Kill Podcast, and host of the Dave Morrow PT channel on YouTube, Dave Morrow. Dave, thanks for reaching out and thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Marty. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I just grew tired with all the American Air Force, Army, and Marine stories, so had to go up to Canada to find out what they're doing up there in the military. I was listening to your first episode, and you talked about being in the infantry, and you talked about going over to Afghanistan. So let's go back to how that all starts. All right. Mm-hmm. But is it high school or secondary school up there?
Well, it's province to province, so I guess I'll stick to my province. Every place in Canada is a little bit different, but we have high school period, so that's grade 7 to grade 11. Okay. There's no differentiation between the two. So yeah, so I did high school here. I'm from Quebec. I'm actually in Montreal, just in the suburbs of Montreal. So we're in French Canada here. I do speak English very well, as you can tell. I also speak French. My family's English here, but my actual family, my kids, my wife's Francophone, so it's primarily French in the house. So I'm kind of like the lone English guy in here. It's cute. My kids translate for me when they're speaking in French to my wife, which I understand fully, but they think I don't. So that's cute. But a little bit of
maybe you can keep that card. You can keep that card in your pocket when they think, "I will outsmart Dad." And,
exactly.
I mean, you got young kids, right?
I do. Yeah, 6 and 3.
So that'll probably come in handy here in about 5 more years when they start doing the same things you did as a kid. So
yeah, I hope they don't, but we'll see how that.
It is inevitable.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in Canada? That's where you went to school?
I did. Yeah, I grew up, born and raised here in Montreal, and I went to school here, did university here, joined the military here in the reserves with my regiment called the Canadian Grenadier Guards. So to give you a bit of context, here in Canada, we've got regimental system, which is based off the British system. So we don't quite have units like you guys do. Our regimental system is very, I guess, rooted in tradition and an old school British kind of ideology. So you join a unit and you kind of stick with them for quite a while. And our regiments go back, to typically, like our regiment is the first in Canada, actually. It goes way, way back. If you have a picture of the Grenadier Guards in England that do the changing of the guard with the red tunics, we're the sister regiment of that unit. So we have the exact same uniform. It's just we have a bit of Canadian stuff thrown in there. Yeah. So we do ceremonial duties in Ottawa. We used to, actually, until COVID hit, but we used to do the changing of the guard on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, and we used to do the sentry duties at the Governor General's residence. So I did that for a few years. I thought, hey man, I'll join the military. I was just out of high school. We have So it's, again, confusing. We have high school. Then here in my province, we go to college, which is 2 years, which is technically called CJEP. I won't get into the acronym. And then after that, if you want, you can go to university. So so I did college here, and I saw the recruiter, who's actually one of my buddies now, and he was dressed in a scarlet tunic, and I was with my best bud. I'm like, oh my God. You know how many girls I'd pick up in that uniform?
Yeah.
And then they said on top of it, you're going to make $6,000 in the summer. It's like, sign me up, bro. So it
really, did you have any history of it?
Oh, well, my grandfather,
any military history in your family?
Yeah, my grandfather fought in the second in the Italian campaign, and I have his medals and like his pictures and everything like that up on the wall. He passed away when I was 3, so I never really got to connect with him. But that lore of him fighting the Italians and getting blown up, and I was always fascinated by it, and that always stuck. I was always, dressing up like G.I. Joe and watching G.I. Joe and playing guns, and that was growing up in the 80s. I was basically I was like full on American, but I was a Canadian. Hulk Hogan. All the American stuff, which was essentially our culture as well. I was just so into Rambo, and so all that stuff. Sure. Yeah. All that stuff really permeated me. Yeah.
When did you graduate high school then? Or 11th grade?
Yeah, 1999.
Yeah, all that 80s stuff you're talking about, you grew up with? That's great, because it's like, it sounds like you're as old as me.
Yeah, I'm in my 40s. I mean, I was a kid, but it really left an impression on me. So then when was that, 2000, I started the process of joining. I did my recruit training in 2001.
Okay.
That summer, and we all know what happened in 2001 in September. Yeah. So I remember I was at football practice, and so if anybody's listening to this and they're, I guess, under the age of 30 or under the age of like 35, there was really not any internet. There was, but you had to go to like the library. Nobody had it on their phones. There was a small little TV in the lunch area. So the planes
news groups.
Yeah, exactly. Like the planes were hitting the towers, and nobody knew what the hell was going on. There was like a buzz, but it was like, oh my God, you just go to class, and I'm at football practice, and my buddy comes up. He's like, bro, dude, you're going to war. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, dude, go check the news. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, I called my unit, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do. So obviously something's happening. And then from there, it took almost 10 years for me to actually see any action.
Yeah, sure.
I did a lot of training here in Montreal. I did all my army training all over basically North America. Did some stuff over in the UK. Did a lot of exercises in the US actually. During the wintertime, we go down to Florida, we go down to Mississippi, we do our concentration exercises down there. And I'd always loved to we always had these big exercises for like a week and a half, 2 weeks in the States. And it was right during our, university like semester. I was a terrible student. So I said, yeah, I'll go on those exercises. So it took me 7 years to finish my degree, but that's neither here nor there. I had a great career, and I was released in 2016 because I got banged up when I was overseas. So since then, I've been a high school teacher, and I've worked in tech. And now I run 2 companies and host a podcast. So it's been a wild ride, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, that's a great rundown. Now I'm going to go back and pick it apart, right?
Right on.
So how does the recruiting work for you guys? Now, the guy looked good, but does he sit down? Does he talk about possibilities? Do you have an entrance test? The U.S. has its famous ASVAB, which kind of helps you or hurts you in the jobs you want to get after that. Does Canada have something like that?
Oh, yeah. I can't remember the name of it. I remember I had a young dude asked me online, hey, and I was like, is that the IQ test? He's like, yeah. How do you prep for it? I said, I don't know. I didn't even know what I had to do until they called me on the phone. They said, all right, show up at the recruiting center this time, and you're going to be doing this test. So I just showed up, like so there is the, I can't remember the name of our test, but it's an IQ test. And it's just to see what you want or qualify for, just like you guys. Right. But I only wanted to join the infantry. So, I mean, the only trade that was lower on the IQ scoring was cook, I believe. And one of my good buddies, actually, he really screwed the pooch on the exam. So he had to join as a cook the first year, and we still bust his balls because I was like, dude, you're dumb. He's actually very intelligent. He just got nervous during the test. But not to slam any cooks out there, but that was just something that we used to bug my buddy about. So because I only wanted
here in the US, there's a big bonus for cooks.
Oh, okay. Well, I imagine. I mean, our cooks are like, they're rock stars, man. Our cooks, they're so good.
Yeah.
We are spoiled. Until you go and deploy, you don't realize how good the food is in our military. It's probably why we have like the fattest military in the planet, but that's a whole other conversation. Like when you have guys whipping up these like beef bourguignons and cakes, and it's incredible what they're able to do. So, but that's neither here nor there. The process was pretty straightforward. There was an interview, there was the IQ test, there was the physical fitness test, which was just basically the YMCA step test. I think we had to do 10 push-ups, no pull-ups. Really? And because for us, the military is what we call it, like, it's purple when you join. So they don't identify whether or not you join the Army, the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, and you can't direct entry into spec ops or anything like that. So you just join the military, and we're so small that everything goes through central processing. And so therefore everybody does the exact same test.
Okay.
So there's no differentiators. So therefore it's just a really basic test. I went to the YMCA, did it, and then that was it. Like paperwork was done in a few months, and then I was getting my gear at the base that's not too far from here, and I was in.
What'd your parents think?
You know what's funny? I thought I thought my mom was going to have a bigger reaction. I remember this so well. I remember going home and I said, "Hey, Ma, I signed up to the Army." And she went, "Oh, okay." It was so uneventful. I was just thinking, what? Oh no, because she's always very overprotective. Yeah. And so I thought it was going to be. I like bugging her. I still like bugging her. Right? She's 75. I still bug her. And she just said, "Yeah, okay." And I was just like, "That's weird. I didn't get any more reaction than that."
It's kind of disappointing in a way.
Yeah, it was kind of disappointing. I'll be honest, but it was a whole other story when I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. Yeah. So then it kind of got real. So, but aside from that, no, I really had a great experience joining. Everything was super smooth, and I really, really loved being on basic training. I realized that this was my element, and I realized that I'm actually good at this.
Oh.
I was okay in school. I wasn't a great athlete, but this was something that I was actually pretty good at.
Had you ever obviously you're an athlete, so you didn't have any problem with the physical portion. Had you ever shot before?
No, I'm a suburban kid. So,
okay. All right.
I grew up more or less in the city. So my experiences with kind of like the outdoorsmanship and like shooting and I had no experiences with that. I was baseball and football, hockey, high school shenanigans, but I didn't really have like a really like rugged upbringing. So that was my first taste of sleeping outside and
you're like a kid with a rucksack. You're like a kid in a candy store because you haven't done any of that stuff, right? Yeah,
it was all novel to me. I thought, oh man, and I showed up in shape because my buddy had joined before me, and he just said, "Yeah, just get ready to run, man, and do push-ups and pull-ups." And so I said, "Okay, I can prep for that." And I'm a tall guy, so running wasn't that big of an issue. And in my mind, I was showing up basically like on Bud's training. I was going to show up and everybody was going to be machines, right? Everybody's going to be a beast. So I was scared. So I was just cranking out push-ups, pull-ups, running. And then I showed up and then I realized, no, this is basic. This is the basic course. So I was really well prepared, which allowed me to take on a little bit more on the leadership side of stuff and encourage guys and make sure they're ready. And I wasn't as tired and I wasn't as messed up from sleep debt and everything like that. So that translated in just me being more confident. And then I carried that on throughout the rest of my career.
Where was that training done at? Do you have different places, obviously, across Canada?
Oh, yeah. So our unit, because we're here in Montreal, but we did a lot of our training in Ottawa because we did our ceremonial duties in Ottawa. I did my training anyways in what we call Connaught Ranges. So it's a massive range. I think it's the largest shooting range in the Commonwealth. They do all kinds of shooting competitions there. Yeah, it's like kilometers of like shooting ranges. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. And then the special forces guys have a range there as well. So that was kind of cool because I was a kid, right? And Yeah, you don't know anything. So 2001, the Canadian Army still was wearing olive drab uniforms, like Vietnam era style.
Really?
Yeah. It was super ghetto. So we have these like old school uniforms, right? And then these special forces guys, the JTF guys, that's our tier 1 unit. They're there shooting, and they've got rifles that I've never seen before. Their hair is long. They're jacked. They've flannels on and combat pants. And I'm like, who are these guys? Like, is this a thing? Are they actually like, yeah, those are the special forces guys? And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And that was just a really cool experience. Like, obviously we weren't allowed to talk to them, and like, we just like averted their eyes whenever.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Like, I was scared shitless of these guys, right?
Sure.
Now, a lot of them are my friends, but back in the day when you're a 19-year-old kid and
of course,
with Oakleys on and beards, and you're just like, oh my God, like, you can walk around with your rifle just like slung in the mess hall. What is going on here? So that was a cool experience, and it gave me kind of a taste of like what the real guys are doing. And then from there, like, we did training in there's a big base in Petawawa, Ontario, where the Reg Force unit, the Royal Canadian Regiment, is stationed. So they have 2 of their battalions there. Did a lot of training there as well. And then all over Canada, like here in Quebec, we have a big base as well. And then, like I said, I did some training down in the States, and then out west as well, especially when we're ramping up before going overseas to Afghanistan. We have a big training center in Wainwright, Alberta.
So you said you joined as a reserve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Do they do reserves like we do reserves, where it's 1 weekend a month, that kind of thing? Or is it just a status? You're really full-time, but it's just a status.
Yeah, it's a little bit different from what I understand, because I was deployed with the 10th Mountain Division.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I got to understand the American system a little bit better. So in comparison, since you guys have, your regular army, you have your guard, and then you have your reserves, we're, I guess, kind of like a hybrid between all 3 as a reservist here. So if I decide to go to work, let's say on a parade night, which would be typically a Tuesday night,
you
go in for 3 hours. You might clean weapons, you might do some professional development,
okay, yeah,
a little bit of PT, and just kind of check in with your guys, have a beer, see you later.
Really?
And then on the weekend, so typically there's definitely more than 1 weekend a month. It was closer to like 2 weekends a month. You'd have just a training exercise. So we'd go in the woods, wouldn't sleep all night, and then maybe shoot guns, do some patrolling, dig some holes, like typical army stuff, typical infantry stuff, trying to keep our skills sharp. And then you'd have in the summer just a long period where we do either your career courses, so you go on leadership training, or you would teach on a course once you're leadership trained at a leadership company, or you get ready to go overseas. So if you decide that you want to work a little bit longer, not just do kind of one-off days and just do a contract, we have different types of contracts for reservists. So some guys are reservists, but they're full-time. They just chose to work at a certain brigade or division or unit for a certain period of time because the contract's out. Okay. And then if you wanted to deploy, you would sign a different contract, which we call a Class C contract, which is a full-time contract. You're employed for 2 years full-time. Okay. And you're basically a full-time soldier, but you still belong to your reserve unit. So we don't deploy reserve units like you would, or guard units like you would as a whole to, a theater of operations. Individuals from these reserve units find and plug holes in the units that are deploying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. It's as needed kind of thing.
That's right.
Or you're in the Army, you're completing your degree. At the end of, you said your degree took a little longer than normal, right?
Yeah. 7 years. 7 years for a 4-year degree, but that's neither here nor there again.
Yeah, you got your money's worth. What's your full-time gig then? Is it the Army?
So back then, I paid for all my schooling, my apartment, my car, everything with my Army reserve pay.
Okay.
So that allowed me to go to school. I mean, school here in Quebec is really cheap. Like compared to what you guys pay in the States, I was paying 2,500 Canadian dollars a semester.
Yeah.
So, that including books, and then the rest paid for my, apartment and stuff like that. Right. So I was pretty lucky on that front. And so once I left, like once I finished school, I was a teacher. I was a high school teacher. That was what I decided I wanted to do. So I was doing that on a substitution level for a little bit before I deployed. And then when I came back, that was my full-time gig. I taught high school science and math for 6 years after I came home from Afghanistan. And that was, what I figured I was going to do the rest of my life. But turns out you end up going down a different path, and then what you thought was going to be, the be all and end all is no longer that. But, I got into entrepreneurship because of my, I got released because I was injured and I wasn't in a good place. And I just knew teaching was not the right place for me. And I had to make a decision and decided I'm getting out. I need to do something different. And that just led me to what I'm doing now.
I thought you were very honest and very clear on your opening episode about how the draw to do something more fulfilling was eating at you, and that you were tired of dreading the job. And I think we've all been there as well. You want to look forward to something and lean a little bit more forward, get back around your community, I think you said. What's the term that you said on your podcast about you use it at the end of your podcast. So there's like a shout out to somebody, some community. I can't remember, sheepdogs.
The sheepdog community. Yeah. Sheepdogs. Yeah.
What is that?
Actually, that's borrowed from Tim Kennedy and Dave Grossman. So the sheepdog community, I first heard about it from Lieutenant Colonel.
You can say lieutenant. I know you're from another country. It's okay. I can translate that.
You guys are going to get you're going to get comments like it's pronounced lieutenant. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still don't understand why there's a F in lieutenant.
Whatever.
I've tried to figure it out, but that's just the way it is. It's not spelled that way, but I know I would argue like neither is colonel, but
that's true.
There's an R in there. So I don't know. I blame Napoleon for all of that. So, so the question was the sheepdog community. Yeah. The term sheepdog I got from Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who in his book on killing and on combat, he described the community as basically you have the wolves, the sheep, and the sheepdogs. And the sheepdogs are the folks in the military, the police, EMS professionals, like those individuals that keep watch, right, of the sheep. Right. So the civvies that are doing their thing, they're going to work. So you have to have your sheepdogs because there's plenty of wolves out there. And if you don't have the sheepdog, the wolf is able to prey on those sheep. Sure. So you get to pick, like, do you want to be a sheep or do you want to be a sheepdog?
I like it.
If you decide to be a sheepdog, there's a certain responsibility with it. So, all of us that served, we be called sheepdogs because we decided that we were going to sacrifice for our countries, and then, police and everything like that. They do the same thing for their communities. So it's just an homage to his term, and a bunch of other guys have picked up the term as well. And I like it. I think it represents well what we do.
It's a much better, much more poetic description to describe what we do. I agree. Mm-hmm. So, was there ever an opportunity for you to go special operations?
Oh yeah, that's like one of my biggest regrets that I'm working on. I'm working on letting go. Yeah, I'm working on letting go. It was something that like I said, I was just fascinated as soon as I saw them, because I had no contact with the military world, right? Until I joined, and then I started getting exposed to these different units and different capabilities. And I didn't even know we had special forces. My context around special forces was basically only the Navy SEALs because of the movies, Charlie Sheen, that kind of stuff. Right. Charlie
Sheen. Wow. You went way back. Oh yeah. That's a great one. Yeah.
So I guess it just started from that. And then I decided, because I knew that you had to have a minimum of 2 years as a reservist before you could apply. So I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. So in secret, I just started running my guts. I didn't know, there was no training plans. This was 2002, 2003. There's really nothing like we have now because the internet wasn't really that big, right? Yeah. There wasn't to pull the resources and to figure out what to do. You had to find a guy that went and failed. And most of the guys wouldn't say anything. So you're kind of like, well, how do I even apply? What do I do? So I was just like, look, I'm just going to get super fit and then I'm going to apply. But I I recognize now I didn't, because I didn't reach out, I never got a mentor. And that's what I really needed.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I didn't know. Had I applied and gone, I probably would have learned a lot, but I definitely would have failed because I didn't work on any strength. I didn't know the standards well enough. So I was just running as fast as I could for as long as I could, doing push-ups, stuff like that. But I wasn't working on the key components that were necessary for myself to be a special forces warrior. And that was the only unit we had that I knew of at the time. We've since added a few more in Canada, but it was definitely something that I had my eye on, and I never saw it through. And I even had a chance encounter with the unit when we did a training exercise, and I was the enemy force commander.
Oh, nice. With
a bunch of young privates, and I got to kind of we had paintball rounds and stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
It was a lot of fun, So I got to link up with the guys from the unit, from the JTF that were running the exercise and making sure that things were running well and stuff like that. And so, we got to chat and stuff like that. And one of the operators, he turns to me, he's like, "Hey, you know what, Dave, you're a pretty switched on guy, man. Have you ever thought about joining?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, why don't you put your application?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't." And I realize now, like, that was my sign. Like, that was it, man. Like, I should have taken that and been like, "Hey, you know what? I just don't know what to do." I didn't ask any questions. I didn't. And so,
why do you think that was?
I was immature and I was scared. I was super scared because for me, I didn't know. I hate doing, and this is actually something I've grown through, is I always hated doing something for the first time and not being amazing at it. And so that held me, that held me back from a lot of things. And then it was just through, trials and tribulations that I realized, wait, I got to get rid of this because it's just holding me back from doing a whole bunch of stuff, namely like what I'm doing now. I know I suck when I started. Like, I know I sucked at podcasting. I know I sucked at coaching. I know that's the point. I can't get better unless I try. So that's where I've grown, and I've used that as a motivator for me. Like, I had that opportunity. I didn't take it. I'm not going to let that happen, for the foreseeable future, because I've had that experience, and I recognize that it was a big sign, and I didn't capitalize on it. So I try to help other guys and gals that come through my world. If they're considering it, I go, look, do not hesitate. Go, get ready, put in your application. Don't think, oh, I'll do it in a year. I'll do it in 6 months. I'll do it. No. Make the plan, start working on it now, and execute.
Right.
So what if you fail? Most people don't even decide, like myself, to even put the application in. So do that, and you'll be a million times better for doing it.
When do you think that introspection, where you kind of realize that about yourself, kind of hit? Was it maybe recovering from your injuries? Was it just where all you got is nothing but time to think?
That's exactly what it was. I still had a lot of growing up to do. So it was a combination of being injured and having my first kid, being married, getting a house.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess I realized that after having a child, getting married, having, a suburban life, being injured, not really taking it seriously, having a career that I was definitely unsatisfied with, all those factors combined. And then it all kind of came to a head when my back locked up at work. And I couldn't get out of the locker room. We had a locker room where I was teaching. So I worked out, and then I was just literally putting on my pants, and then it just rocked me. I've never had that happen before. And it was destabilizing. Yeah. I couldn't move. If you ever had your back lock up, and I was sweating. And so my coworkers, my buddies thought I was joking.
Of course.
Like, dude, I'm like, guys, I'm not joking. They're like, but you got to go teach. I'm like, yeah, I know it's going to be a bit of an issue. So they went up to the staff lounge, and we had some priests on staff, and they had like walkers. So they brought me down a walker. It was so humiliating. So they brought me down a walker. I got a walker, and I got finally we had a little elevator. So we got in the elevator, and then I taught that whole day. And
you did?
End of the day, yeah, well, I kind of had no choice because at the end of the day, I had a major presentation. I was doing my master's at the time, and I had it was 100% presentation. It was my entire semester in that one presentation. So, I've been working all semester for it. So like, well, I'm not going to go home, because if I go home, I know I'm not going to get out of bed.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just going to stay at work. I'm going to take some pills. I'm just going to, get her done.
Damn.
And so I finished the day, and then my wife came to pick me up, and she again thought I was joking too, because I could barely shuffle my feet. And she was laughing at me. She's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "I'm not joking." She's like, because I'm always kind of lighthearted and laughing and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I was stuck in bed for about 3 days, and it was hard on the ego. And I realized I had to change. So I knew I had to change physically. And then I said, well, if I'm going to change physically, I might as well change like who I am fundamentally. And I had to dissolve my ego, get rid of all that baggage. And then that's just been the process ever since, because I knew I didn't want to be stuck in pain, miserable the rest of my life. And I wanted to make sure that my kids saw like the best part of me. And that was it, man. And that's where I just started the journey. I started reading. I started listening to different podcasts. I started just opening myself up to all the different experiences that I was closed off to, because in my mind, I was still like the senior NCO, hard ass, typical like army guy.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't need all that hippy dippy esoteric woo woo stuff. But then I started realizing, oh boy, I need to be a lot more open minded. And that's 6 years ago. And that really fundamentally changed who I am and what I do.
That's a hell of a revelation to come to. And you say it very cavalierly, but that couldn't have been easy to I'm just going to change. Okay, I'm a new guy now. I know you're saying it deadpan that way, but it was obviously still an ongoing process for you, right?
Oh yeah. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because especially your ego, to be able to put it aside and say, I don't know what I don't know. That was the hardest thing.
And it's tough because your early part of your career is your ego is what helped you to be successful in that environment, right?
Oh yeah.
You got to be an NCO, you got to lead people, and you were probably pretty good at it, I would imagine.
That was okay,
But that way to operate under the military, obviously it always doesn't work when you get out of the military, or it definitely doesn't work with your family, right?
That's right.
To realize that, to go, oh, okay, let's do some course correcting here.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. There was that what you just said, the military style leadership. There are elements that help in everyday life and working with your family, but overall, it's not a great leadership style to be using with your family. There's a lot of things that can be misinterpreted. Having like the mission type mindset can run you into a little bit of problems when you're dealing with a 3-year-old, So you have to be a little bit more open, as you've had kids. So it's just, you got to be able to be flexible. And one thing I've learned too, with kids is they're not the same. They're two different human beings. What works with my son doesn't work with my daughter. And that's the same with human beings in general. And so once you get that perspective, just like when I train and folks, or when I have my coach train me, like everybody's a little bit different. You can have general ideas of how to do things, but everybody's going to need a kind of finesse touch to get the best results. And that's what I've realized over the years, that there's just not one thing that works for everybody. It's really, everybody's got kind of a hodgepodge mishmash of everything else.
Well, let's talk about your deployment. All right. How long before you went did you get notified that I don't know what they call it, calling you up, or
no,
how do they do that?
No, we have to like fight for a position.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. We have to, when we call them rotos. So I was on for rotation, right?
Oh, okay.
So I was on roto 310. So that was the third rotation in 2010. Okay. So there's typically
easy numbering system. Yeah,
exactly. There you go. So I initially wanted to go to Bosnia. We had rotations that were open, in 2001, and I made an error there too. Well, I mean, maybe it wasn't an error. Who knows, right? I mean, I said I don't really want to go, because I was asked by my I guess we call it squad leaders. We call them section commanders. He was going overseas, and he just finished training me, and he asked, "Hey, we've got spots. Would you like to come?"
Oh,
and I said, "I want to finish my school." He goes, "Okay, no worries." In hindsight, I probably should have gone. It seemed like it was a really good tour. It was not a combat tour like Afghanistan. It was kind of the winding down of
it's another country.
War.
It's
exactly. So everybody that went, they had a good like real army experience. Like you were still doing patrols and stuff, but it wasn't war fighting like Afghanistan. Sure. So I missed that one. Then I applied for another one. I got bumped by someone with more seniority. And so when Afghanistan came around, because there's only so many spots for reservists because I mean, there's so few of us. And then when there is something, everybody wants to go because the deployment they're few and far between. We don't have a lot of wars to go fight. So those that are keen and want to actually experience fighting or just military life deployed, when they pop up, it's all hands on deck. Like, let's go. Who's available?
Does it also benefit your career paperwork wise to show, hey, I've been deployed, I've done this, I've done that?
I'd like
the American military is very much about that.
Yeah. So for sure, for the regular army, for the regular military, yes, for sure. But for the reserves, no, not at all. Because I would even say the opposite, which is unfortunate. There's kind of like a perverse incentive to not go. Because what I've noticed is that the guys that did go over, they were like, we would come back and there's this kind of animosity between the guys that didn't go and the guys that did go. Sure. So the very few of us that did go, we had war experience. We shot at people. We got shot at. We did war stuff. Right. And then a lot of the senior staff, well, they'd never done anything. They'd never been deployed. They didn't have the opportunity to deploy when they were younger. And so it created this disconnect. Wow. And so a lot of us younger guys, and I think the same thing's happening to the American military with like leadership and stuff like that, because the senior leadership, they didn't fight in Vietnam now. And then they weren't LTs or captains during Afghanistan and Iraq. They were kind of in this middle zone. Yeah. So there's going to be that disconnect between the leadership levels. And it's happening here too in Canada. So those that stayed back typically got promoted faster because we don't get promoted on tour when we're reservists. When you come back and you're probably, a year, maybe two of just kind of recovery and kind of getting back in the swing of things. And you're not going on leadership courses. You're not doing career courses. So those that don't go, they do those courses. So they get ahead. And so you see this kind of gap of those that didn't go are at the higher levels and they've got promoted. And the guys that did go, well, they might be a little bit banged up. They're a bit slower in the career progression, or they just get out. So it was
interesting.
It's unfortunate that we didn't do more to hang on to all that corporate knowledge of the warfighters that went over. Yeah. And that was kind of something that soured me. Was there wasn't a real push when I was hurting to kind of gather around and be like, hey, Dave, like seriously, what's really going on, man? Like this is really out of sorts for you. We really like to keep you on board. Is there something we can figure out for you to do that's not necessarily in like the infantry role? Maybe we can keep you around in admin. Maybe we can find another spot, but we really want to, and not just me and everybody else that was kind of in the same boat as me, they just kind of let them all go. And that's unfortunate because that knowledge, once you lose it, you can't get it back. You need another war in order to get it back. Right. Which is unfortunate.
We do that too, except in the US, we just deploy you till you choose to get out. It's like, okay, I'm on my fifth one. It's like, man, maybe I should get out by now. So you got on, right? So you're in now. You're going. How long did you get to train up before you went?
So, well, I mean, I was in the military 10 years. So I was already a sergeant before I got a shot at deploying. And what's cool is that I got to pick the job I wanted. And we have this, so I didn't feel comfortable going as an infantry sergeant because for us, that meant I would have been mechanized. And I have I have no experience being a mechanized troop commander. So I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it would have been all in French too. So no, thank you.
Oh, jeez.
No, because I'm from Quebec, so I was going with the Quebec Battalion here, the Royal 22nd Regiment, the Vendus. So I said no. I got to find something that's more suited to my personality. And we have this unit, part of the influence activities, which includes PSYOPs, HUMINT, and the other unit was CIMIC, so civilian military cooperation. So I said, you know what, this suits my personality a lot better. I'm going to be interacting with the locals every day. I'm going to be building projects. I'm going to, do my thing. I need that. I'm not going to be in charge of, a bunch of troops. I'm not going to really have any oversight. I like this. So it was cool. It was really cool. I basically got to walk around my entire tour with a sack full of money and, sign contracts and work with spec op guys. And it was a cool go. So it took 8 months of lead up training. before I left.
So did you say intel essentially is what it was?
So I was part of the influence activities group. So that included
influence activities.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's part of what we call the IA cell. So influence activities had 3 units. So it had the human intelligence unit, it had the PSYOPs unit, and it had us, the CIMIC unit. Now, the tricky dance I had to do was I couldn't be perceived as an intel gathering asset, because it'd be hard for me to do my job and gain the trust of the local population if I'm like, hey, let's build this, that, and the other. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, Dave. I'm pretty sure you just want access to us so that you can like take pictures of us and then freaking send the guys to knock our doors down. So I had to negotiate that delicate balance when I was over there. But so it was 8 months of pre-deployment training, which was okay. I mean, it was a lot of lead up. I didn't get the experience that I was expecting to get. A lot of that could have been cut down, in my opinion. There's a lot of just waiting around at battalion, kind of not doing much. Yeah. So I was like, well, you know what? I paid off all my student debt, so cool, thanks. And then once I got over, I was just like, I was really eager to do my job. So I guess it did good for me to get ready and like anticipating the tour in that sense. I was just bored out of my mind. I'm like, just send me over there like right now.
Right.
So that was basically it. Most of us do that. And then you have a big concentration exercise for like a month out in Wainwright, Alberta, which is just like in the middle of the prairies, just looking at like buffalo all day. And we did our like battle inoculation with like the CF-18s and the the leopard tanks and everything like that. So like we got like the full on like war experience, running up beside the tanks and stuff like that. And that was pretty cool. Like it just kind of gets you ready for like the loud noises and stuff of war. So
it does.
That was like that was the best part about the whole exercise. It was like a day of doing that. And I was like, cool, this is what war is going to be like. That's not what war was like for me. But that's neither here nor there.
But you got to inhale all the carcinogens that will affect you later in life anyway. So
for sure. And the concussion of like the being next to the tank when the main gun goes off.
That's a lot.
Wow, that is a big bang. Yeah, it's crazy.
So let's visit your mom real quick. And how did she take you being deployed? A little bit worse of a reaction than you joining up?
So I don't know how you guys do deployments, but at the battalion, you'd have chalks that are going out, right? So you just, everybody gets on a flight. And so what they did is like in the gym for the battalion, you show up for your, flight departure, and everybody's there with their family and their friends and their kids and everything like that. And there's bouncy castles to try to make it like fun for the kids and stuff like that. But you're going to war. Yeah. And the energy, I'll never forget that day. It was because I'm an only child too. So I said goodbye to my mom and dad just outside the battalion, because I knew going in, if I had to like walk, I wouldn't have been able to hold it together. So like with the kids crying and all that, I was like, I'm just going to say goodbye to you out here. And that's that. So it was emotional. Smart. It was emotional. Yeah, it was emotional. My mom was very emotional. My dad was like just holding it together, right? As the stoic dad would. And then that was that. So I just basically kept my head down and got on the plane, and it was just like the quietest plane ride over, right? Like, especially all the moms and dads that are, just saying goodbye to their kids. That was, a very quiet plane ride over to Germany. And then we bounced over to Cyprus and then into theater. So, and that was it. Then I showed up on, so Canadian football, the Grey Cup was being played that day with my team. The Montreal Alouettes, and they won the Grey Cup. So I show up, I go to Canada House. I'm with my buddy. It's his third tour. So he knows everything and he knows everybody. He's like, yeah, come. So we were watching like the big screen TV, and I was watching my team win the Grey Cup. And I was like, dude, this is amazing. Awesome. War's amazing. The Dutch weren't far away. They were having a party because they were finished there. Like they just finished in 2010. Like they were done the war. Like that was it. They're done. Oh man. So they were partying and drinking, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, is this not the right theater of operations? Like, yeah, it's just the Dutch. They're done. Don't worry about that. So that was my first experience like in theater in Kandahar Airfield, which was like partying, drinking, really beautiful Dutch women, and the Montreal Alouettes winning the Grey Cup. And then obviously a few days later, it was up to my strong point, and the real war began from there.
When did you get to Kandahar? Like what part of the year?
Oh yeah. So I left on November 27th, and I'm guessing I got there in December. I don't know. I lost track of time. I think it took 2 days to get into Kandahar. So, the time change and stuff like that and changing flights. I'm pretty sure I got there like just on the 30th of November. And then I was on my strong point by the 3rd or 4th of December. So
you didn't, it wasn't
the winter.
Let's open the plane door and that big sledgehammer of heat hits you.
No, it was actually quite nice. We got there in the middle of the night, and I was like, hey, I was like, hey, this isn't so bad. This is like 10 degrees. This is like fall back home. This is perfect. Yeah. So I was there, throughout the winter, which was fine. And then, I left in July. So I got the heat wave.
You did?
In May. Yeah.
So 6 months deployment.
8 actually. I had an 8 month. So our deployments.
Oh, 8. Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, 8. Our deployments were a little bit longer for for the end of our mission. So 8 months was it was stretched. Most of ours were 6 months, but mine was 8 just because it was the last combat mission. So it was the last roto that was doing like active war fighting. So
did you know that at the time?
Oh yeah. So that was the thing. Like we were like, Obama had said, hey, we're pulling out he mentioned like the date, right? And everybody's like, well, what the hell? Like, you're setting a limit to that. And so then we hopped on the bandwagon and said, 2011, we're out too. And so it just made it so weird. It was just such a weird thing to be doing. And I kind of understood it, but I also didn't know why we were there. I was there when Osama bin Laden was killed. And I remember joking with the sergeant major. I'm like, hey, dude. I'm like, Norm. We get to go home, bro. He's like, get back out to your strong point. I'm like, no, but this is why we're here, are we? So there's just so many little incidents like that. And I remember sitting on my strong point and watching the convoy of Canadian vehicles leaving, almost like a victory parade, but in reverse.
Wow.
And Canadian flags. And I was like, this is surreal. I was watching it from the top of a school. I was like, this is surreal, man. Like this is historic, but also I don't think anybody cares. It was just a weird feeling. It was a super weird feeling. Yeah. I'm like, well, we did all this work here and now we're just kind of like rolling out and God knows what happens. And we did know what happened 2 years ago, right? It was just a complete and utter disaster. So
do you want to talk about what happened? How you got hurt?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's nothing epic. I wasn't knee deep in grenade pins. I was.
You don't have to be, right? I mean, most of the Army's, disability comes from non-combat related accidents. So.
Exactly. So I was in theater and I just went to go pick up my gear and my back herniated. It went like bang. I was like, oh shit, what the hell is that?
Oh, it did? Just like that?
Yeah. So I was obviously I wasn't tracking that I wasn't doing things right. I was fit, but not fit in the right ways. And I'm a tall dude, right? I'm 6'4".
Wow. Did that come from the way you were lifting or?
Oh yeah. It was just I was 29 at the time. It was just years of not knowing what I didn't know and not training properly, not reinforcing my core and not knowing that I was super weak down my midline. Like, all these things that I do now that I help guys work on now is kind of why I have my business. I just don't want other folks to go down the same path. It's totally preventable. That's the thing that was annoying. It's totally preventable. Yeah. And then I fell off a wall and just like jammed my knee up pretty bad. And so
you fell off a wall?
Yeah. It was so like Afghanistan is just like there's walls everywhere, right?
Yeah, those low walls. Yeah, right.
And I'm 200 plus pounds and I've got about 80 pounds of gear on me. And so you're hopping over. I'm like, I got this. And then I was one of the first guys over, and you don't realize some of the walls, like you may be going, it's at chest height, but then on the other side, it's like 2 times body height.
Oh, I got you.
And so you're going over and you're trying to keep a low profile, trying to stay tactical. And then you go over and I go, oh shit. And I just kind of tumble over. I swore a little bit in French. The guys loved it. And then that was that. There's just ibuprofen for the rest of the tour. Yeah. So, and then the other thing was just psychologically, like near the end, like I was getting kind of jaded. And when I went over,
why do you think
I didn't see a point anymore. Are we here to win a war, or are we here just to kind of play patty cake? Because this doesn't make any sense anymore. I don't like Osama bin Laden's dead. We have all this infrastructure here. Why are we fighting in this area? Why are we doing that? And so I had all these questions, and I bulletproofed my mind enough for like combat. I said, you know what? I'm going to be ready for this. I'm ready for blood, guts, everything like that. But what flanked me, and this is what I learned, is that typically if you're going to have like a traumatic incident, it's the stuff that you're not expecting to experience that'll outflank you, and it'll cause some turmoil.
Yeah.
And it was the abuse of children that really affected me, because I was really involved with the creation and opening of schools when I was over there. There's a literal school that our strong point was built around. So I got to, and I'm a teacher, so I was like, oh, this is amazing. I was going into the school regularly to help out. Like, they were teaching me Pashto. I was teaching them a little bit of English.
Wow.
I'd bring them supplies. I had fundraisers back home to help them get a school sign and get all kinds of stuff into the school. I got them desks, everything like that. So like, I was connected, like I was part of the community. And like these kids, like they were, we would go out and play, and like, it was a lot of fun. And it was like a moment of joy in this whole chaotic like war mess, right? And I really appreciate that. And then I realized, well, there was attacks that were happening. Taliban were attacking the children going to school. They were putting IEDs, and the kids got killed. And I was like, how do we go murder everybody right now? Because like when you start attacking kids, it's like, okay, you know what? You want to attack us? That's fine. But you start going after these kids. So they're like the wind, right? How do you find, you know what I mean? It was a really, it's not like the Germans and the Allies. You couldn't tell who was who in the zoo. And then, then we got some videos of, just flat out child abuse, molestation, everything like that was going on. And the kids that were in the school that I knew. And then I was just like, okay.
Oh no, you knew them.
So yeah. So it's like, okay. And the people that are involved are the local like leadership. So it's like the police chief, the leader of the town, the mullah, like you're just like, oh my, and it's like, okay, this goes against every value, every moral that we have as a Westerner. Yeah. How do we go murder everybody now? Because that's the only sentiment that you could have in that war setting. It's like, okay, well, these assholes, like, what do we do? Like this would mean you would go to jail for a long time here. What are we doing about it here? And, chain of command's like, well, our hands are tied. It's their country. They're doing what they want. We're not their police. And if the police chief is there, guess it's okay. And it's like, I couldn't rationalize that. I'm like, well, then maybe we shouldn't be fighting a war here. You know? So that was hard, and that's taken a lot of time for me to kind of let go and be okay with. But those were the main things that hurt me the most when I was over there. So that's why I'm and I'm thankful for it, because it forced me to start working on myself and to work on the anger and work on the frustration and do more so that I can use it as a force for good and not just like dwell and feel like a victim from that point onward.
It's hard to digest, and I can 100%. See how that would leave some lasting scars that you have to work through without just going, over the edge. So at least you channeled all that frustration and energy into what you're doing now. So you want to take a second and plug what programs you have going now, not only your podcast and your YouTube channel, but what do you offer people on your fitness side?
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Absolutely. The main effort. So my stated goal is to help 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because there's a direct correlation between being overweight and obese and mental health. And if I can help change that, we could have a much better mental health landscape and a much healthier community. Because fundamentally, I think that we, and when I say we, I mean the veteran population, is because we had a bunch of wars that went on over 20, 25 years. Yeah. It wasn't like the Second World War. It's very different. We were different pockets of society didn't really experience or get affected by it. And therefore we have this disunification because of it. We were deployed to a bunch of different places. And unfortunately, a lot of us suffer on our own. What I'm trying to do is get the community together, get everybody healthy, because a healthy individual can do a hell of a lot more. And we have so much to give back. But I was suffering. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out and do podcasts. I couldn't be the man I wanted to be in public because physically I just wasn't doing well. Yeah. So that's why I do the podcast. That's why I do the training programs. I ultimately want you to get healthy and fit so that you can take the next step, whether it's, writing books, whether it's just being a good dad, whether it's being a part of the community and like being on the home and school committee. It doesn't matter. It's just, if you can knock that, first phase of, I call it Maslow's pyramid, right? It's, the pyramid of needs. Like if you can,
hierarchy of needs,
the hierarchy of needs, if you can be healthy physically, and that means controlling your weight, eating well, making sure you do regular exercise, and how to do it and how to do it effectively, man, we've knocked out a huge thing that's holding a lot of veterans back. Yeah. And that's essentially why I created the programs that I have. And the Hard2Kill podcast is just a means to act as a conduit for amazing voices in the health and fitness space, doctors, best-selling authors, etc., to convey what they've learned to the community. And then you can take that and build your own kind of protocol. That's essentially why I'm in this space, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Because I think your message is valuable, and it comes from a unique angle. It's not just like the VA. Our VA sends out newsletters, and it's like, hey, here's yoga you can go do for online, and you're like, oh, that's good. I'm not going to do it because it's so it's impersonal. It's just a Veterans Affair email. And you're like, oh, that sounds fun. But, watching a couple of your videos, you internalize it, you make it personal. You're a likable guy, you're funny. You're walking around with your camera, vlogging or whatever you do. I like those. It's can get to know you. And if you get to know you, then you can start trusting what you're saying. So that's nice. It's a good message.
Thanks.
Let's a couple more questions. We got to finish out with the military stuff. So 2016 is when you got out. That's when you said, hey, we're going to medical you out of here. Yep. God, that's 15 years. I mean, I don't know if you guys do retirements at 20 or how that works.
25. Yeah, 25.
Oh, 25. Oh, so you still have a long way to go. Jeez. That sucks. But for us, it'd be like 15 years, man. You're almost there. Were you disappointed? Were you going to go 25?
Well, so that's the thing. I didn't really know much about our pension at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't even really realize that I was.
You weren't in it for that, right? You weren't in it.
Yeah, I wasn't in it for that. But in hindsight, so you have to do, because I was a reservist, you have to do a little bit more. I would have had to have popped over to the Reg Force. I probably would have done a little bit more than 25 years to get my full pension. But that being said,
But you're an officer, right?
I was an officer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did have an intent of finishing and just having a full on regular Army career as an officer. Whether it was in the infantry or not, I probably wouldn't have been. But once I realized that, you know what, I'm kind of pissed off. I'm grumpy. Yeah. My back hurts. My knee hurts. I didn't even realize that I was struggling psychologically. Oh. I just thought I was good to go, and I was just pissed. So yeah. The sooner the better, essentially, was my attitude towards getting out.
Okay.
And I just, like I said earlier, I wish I had somebody kind of mentor me a little bit better, because I think I would have stayed in. But then again, it's always hindsight's 2020. When I look back, had I stayed in, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And with that being said, I think it was the right time to leave. And I left unceremoniously. I just got a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you've officially been released." I was working, right? I had already had my son already. No, he's born later in the year. Okay. But regardless, I didn't feel it anymore. I was purposely trying to distance myself from the military. Even my friends, I was distancing myself, and I think that's pretty common with a lot of guys that are hurting. They just don't want to deal with it anymore. So I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm a new person now. I'm Teacher Dave, and I don't deal with the military anymore. I deal with 14-year-old boys that, are going through puberty. That's my thing now. So,
which isn't much different than boys you were dealing with in the military.
Yeah, right. And I say boys because literally I was at an all boys Catholic high school, so it was an interesting environment to be in, and the switch was more abrupt than I guess I realized at the time. And if I were to do it all over again, I would have taken the time to just heal and be good and eat good food, get some sun, just kind of recuperate properly. But I got back and I wanted to do it all, man. I just wanted to like crush, because I was, Sergeant Dave Morrow. I just survived the war. Like I can't be beat.
Yeah.
And then I was just, stomping on the gas and stomping on the brake at the same time. So that's just, the lesson learned moving forward. And I try to pass that on to any of the other guys that are coming through the military and need some advice as to how to manage their careers. I just tell them my experience and hopefully they learn something from it.
Now, you're a very good speaker. You've been doing this for a while. You can tell you're very polished. You don't have as many ums and ums that I have. But you're also very measured. So I want you to answer this question, not being measured. I want you to answer this like you were Sergeant Dave again. Mm-hmm. So these are my last two questions. What was the biggest ass chewing you ever got in the military?
Oh, man. Shit. It was on my basic. It
really?
Oh, my God. I've never been yelled at like that before. And the thing was, I thought I was crushing it, right? I was doing well. It was like week 3. Yeah. Like I said earlier, I was good at PT. I was helping guys out. Yeah. And it was a drill lesson. We're on the parade square learning drill. And I remember this so well. I was sitting on the bleachers because it wasn't because I was injured. It wasn't I can't remember why I was on the bleachers. Yeah. Because usually I was in formation the entire time, but I was on the bleachers for some reason. And my buddy, Nick, just sucked at drill. Like he sucked. He would, like you'd say right turn, he'd turn left, like, and he was always bumping into people. And so I started to laugh. Yeah. And so my section commander, Guillaume Couture, who awesome dude. Awesome
you
dude.
Still remember his name?
Yeah. Well, it's because he was actually he was still in, and he trained me in my tactical casualty combat care when I was about to go overseas. So like we have a very small military. So yeah, once you get to know somebody, you pretty much know them and you bump into them the rest of your career. So he's an awesome dude, awesome leader. And he was watching me. He was having a smoke in the smoke pit. And then I remember just hearing, "Fucking Morrow." And I was like, oh shit. And he had a French accent too, right? And so he just came over and he's like, "Get your fucking heels together and get ready." And I was like, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, right.
Just chewed my ass so hard in front of everybody just to make an example. Like, you know what? If you're going to laugh, you're going to pay. He's like, there's no laughing at your buddies. They're trying just as hard as everybody else. And like that imprinted on my freaking soul from that point onwards, like, so that was a really good lesson, man. I remember that so well. I'm nervous just thinking about it right now, man.
And you were what, 19?
I was 19, man. I've never been talked to like that.
Yeah,
get your fucking heels together and prepare for fucking chewing, like I didn't know what to do.
The successful only child, sports high school star. Now you're getting dressed down.
Yeah, exactly.
This one, hopefully, maybe it's easier. The second question I ask is, what is your proudest moment of your time in service?
Oh, proudest moment of my time in service.
There's always a ton of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think hands down, it's the day that we opened up the school in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah,
and it was when it wasn't the formal ceremony. Like the formal ceremony, there's generals and there were we ate dinner and stuff like that. Yeah. It was the next day when the kids showed up and they just run. Now this school hadn't been open since 1999, 2000. Like it's been a long time, right? Since the Taliban took over. So it was closed. And so the first time in close to a decade, the community has a school and the kids rushed in and we were all doing our thing on camp, right? And then we heard kids laughing and playing. And there was just a hush that came down over the entire camp. And we all kind of peered over the Hesco bastions. Yeah. And we all just kind of looked at each other and just like nodded. It's like, yeah, this is what we're here for, man. This is it. Like this is all the medals, everything else. That's irrelevant at this point. This is why we do what we do. And I haven't had a prouder moment since. That was just incredible.
Man, what a moment. What a moment.
Yeah.
Did we get it all?
I think that's, I think we, I mean, we got the big moving part. Yeah, we got the big moving parts.
Well, former Canadian lieutenant, Dave Morrow. It's been a privilege to get your story and an honor to talk to you today, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man. I love doing these kind of things, and I'd love to come on at a future date as well if you have me and have another chat.
Well, if you ever want to crack wise about the news, I can always invite you on. We do that Tuesday nights, and we have a good time with it. So
cool. Keep me in the loop. That'd be pretty cool.
Will do. Thanks, Dave. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks.
On behalf of Lieutenant Morrow, I'd like to thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please leave a like and a comment and share the podcast with someone else. And as always, make sure to download the next episode for more service origin stories. So until next time, a dance, Fallout!